My name is Kael, and the day I awakened I was supposed to receive 1 skill point, like every other normal person on the planet. That was the rule. You turned 16, placed your hand on an awakening crystal, prayed you did not get a useless talent like advanced spoon polishing, and then the system gave you 1 skill point to begin your path. 1 point. That was it. The rich kids spent millions hiring tutors to tell them where to put that single point. The poor kids stared at the skill tree for 3 hours and then panicked. Some people put it into strength. Some picked sword mastery. One guy from my neighborhood put his only point into eyebrow control because he thought it was a hidden intimidation skill. He could now raise 1 eyebrow independently. That was his entire combat career. So when I stepped onto the awakening platform at Valen City Academy, I expected the same miserable choice as everyone else. The hall was packed with students, teachers, guild scouts, parents, reporters, and at least 3 guys selling fake good luck charms outside. My class lined up under a giant crystal sphere while our instructor, Professor Darius, shouted the same speech he gave every year. Your first point does not define your future. Your effort does. Nobody believed him. If your first skill was fireball, you had a future. If your first skill was improved laundry folding, you had a clean shirt. The student before me was Lucien Crest, the golden-haired son of the Crest family, who owned half the mana mines in the eastern region and acted like gravity needed his permission to pull him down. He touched the crystal. Golden light exploded through the hall. A sword-shaped symbol appeared above his head. The teachers gasped. Lucien smiled before the result even finished appearing, which somehow made his face more annoying. He had awakened the rare talent Divine Blade Vessel. Even I had to admit it sounded ridiculous in a cool way. His starting skill choices included Holy Slash, Enhanced Sword Sense, and Radiant Body. He chose Holy Slash, 1 skill point spent. The audience cheered like he had already defeated a demon king. Lucien stepped away from the crystal and looked at me. Try not to awaken dishwashing mastery, Kael. I nodded. If I do, I'll wash the smug off your face. That got me detention before I even awakened. Then it was my turn. I put my palm against the crystal. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the crystal made a sound like someone dropped a cathedral down a staircase. The entire hall shook. Every window flashed white. The crystal turned black, then red, then gold, then somehow displayed a loading circle. Professor Darius stared at it. I stared at it. The crystal displayed a tiny message. Please wait. I almost laughed. Then another message appeared directly in front of my eyes. Awakening complete. Talent, unresolved. Starter class, none. Unspent skill points, 10,000. I blinked. The number stayed there. I blinked again. Still there. I rubbed my eyes so hard I nearly awakened blindness mastery. 10,000. Not 10. Not 100. 10,000 skill points. For comparison, a veteran hunter who had fought monsters for 20 years might earn a few hundred total if they were talented, lucky, and not eaten by something with too many mouths. I had 10,000 before lunch. My first thought was simple. The system was broken. My second thought was even simpler. Do not tell anyone. Professor Darius checked the public crystal display. It showed only one thing. Awakening successful. No talent, no class, no starting skill. The students whispered. Lucien laughed. Nothing? The teacher frowned like I had personally offended education. Professor Darius tapped the crystal 3 times, then smacked the side of it like an old television. Still nothing. Kael, he said carefully. Your awakening appears to have produced an irregular result. That was teacher language for congratulations. Your future is trash. My mother, watching from the back row, gave me a thumbs up anyway. I loved that woman. I bowed, walked off the stage, and kept my face as disappointed as possible while a glowing window followed me around like the universe had just handed me the keys to a weapons warehouse. 10,000 skill points. I sat through the rest of the ceremony without hearing a word. Every few seconds I opened my skill interface under the desk. At first it looked empty. Then I noticed a small arrow. I pressed it. The empty screen unfolded, and unfolded, and unfolded. My skill tree kept expanding until I felt like I was looking at the family history of violence itself. Sword mastery, spear mastery, archery, hand-to-hand combat, mana control, fire magic, ice magic, lightning magic, healing, alchemy, stealth, barrier arts, summoning, cooking, blacksmithing, monster taming, spatial movement, gravity control, dragon language. There was even a skill called dramatic entrance. I immediately respected the system more. Most skills required 1 point for the first level, then more points to improve. Some were locked behind other skills. Some required special conditions. Some looked completely insane. I clicked Sword Mastery. Would you like to spend 1 point? I hesitated. What if the 10,000 disappeared after I used one? What if it was a visual bug? What if I spent a fake point and the system charged me my soul, my house, and my future children? Then I remembered Lucien's face. I spent 1. Sword Mastery Level 1 acquired. Unspent skill points, 9,999. I nearly screamed. Instead I bit my sleeve. The skill was real. The moment it activated, information poured into my mind. Stances, footwork, angles, grip pressure, how to cut without wasting motion, how to move my wrist, how to read an opponent's shoulders. I had never held a real sword before. Now I knew 12 ways to disarm a trained swordsman, and 3 ways to insult his technique while doing it. My hands started shaking, not from fear, from greed. I opened the next level. Sword Mastery Level 2 cost 2 points. I bought it. Then Level 3, then 4. By the time the headmaster finished his speech about responsibility, I had quietly spent 200 points and turned my sword mastery into something called Transcendent Blade Instinct. Apparently normal sword mastery ended at level 10. Mine kept evolving. Basic sword mastery became advanced sword mastery. Advanced became sword heart. Sword heart became blade sovereign. Blade sovereign became transcendent blade instinct. At that point I could look at a wooden chair and identify 7 ways to cut it into identical cubes without making a sound. I had not even taken the Academy entrance combat exam yet. This was a problem. A wonderful, beautiful, terrifying problem. After the ceremony, I went home and locked myself in my room. My mother thought I was depressed because of my failed awakening, so she left a plate of fried dumplings outside my door and shouted that I could always become an accountant. I stared at my 10,000 points. Well, 9,800 now. Then I made the most mature decision of my life. I spent the next 6 hours buying everything that looked cool. Mana control reached maximum. Body reinforcement reached maximum. Reflex enhancement reached maximum. Perception became something called world sense. My healing skill evolved until minor cuts closed before I noticed them. I unlocked lightning step, flame armor, ice spear, shadow movement, danger intuition, poison resistance, curse resistance, mental defense, aerial movement, and battle calculation. Then I found a skill called accelerated learning. I stared at it for 10 full seconds. A skill that made me learn faster. That sounded useful. I maxed it immediately. It evolved into absolute comprehension. The description said I could understand most non-divine techniques after seeing them once. I started laughing alone in my room. Then I realized how suspicious that sounded and stopped. By midnight, I had spent nearly 3,000 points. I still had more than 7,000 left. That was when I understood the real danger. It was not that I had too few points. It was that I had enough points to make terrible decisions with confidence. I almost maxed advanced fishing because the final evolution mentioned sea kings. I almost bought beast digestion because it said I could eventually eat monsters to gain attributes. I did buy perfect balance because I hated slipping on wet stairs. At 2 in the morning I tested body reinforcement by doing a push-up. My hands broke through the floor. I froze. My mother shouted from downstairs, "Kael, nothing happened. Why did the ceiling shake?" Personal growth. She accepted that answer for some reason. The next morning, the Academy entrance combat exam began. Normally, students awakened and then trained for several months before taking it. But Valen City Academy liked drama, so first years had a ranking test on day 1 to separate the gifted from the extremely gifted from the people who would be used as examples in safety lectures. The exam had 3 stages: strength, mana control, combat. I arrived wearing an old training uniform, trying very hard to look average. That lasted 8 seconds. The strength test used a reinforced striking pillar designed to measure physical force. Students walked up and hit it once. A normal new student scored between 10 and 20. Lucien scored 87. Everyone screamed. The instructor nearly kissed the machine. Lucien walked away with the expression of a man who had personally invented punching. Then my name was called. I stepped up to the pillar and immediately realized I had a problem. My body reinforcement skill had become Titan frame. I had no idea what 1% of my strength looked like. So I tried to tap the pillar gently. The pillar vanished. Not broke. Not cracked. Vanished. There was a small boom, a gust of wind, and then the top half of the device was embedded in a hill 200 meters away. Nobody moved. I slowly lowered my fist. The instructor looked at the empty metal base. Then he looked at me. Then he looked back at the hill. "Equipment malfunction," I said. He wrote something on his clipboard with a trembling hand. Next test. That was when I knew pretending to be weak would require actual skill. Luckily, I had points for that. While walking toward the mana control arena, I opened my tree and searched for something useful. Power suppression. I bought it. Then I maxed it. It evolved into perfect concealment. Now I could reduce the apparent level of my strength, mana, aura, and even killing intent. Finally, A skill for acting normal. I activated it. Immediately, 3 instructors stopped staring at me. One even muttered, "Maybe the machine really was defective." Beautiful. The mana test involved moving a small metal ball through a floating obstacle course without touching the edges. Most students took 2 or 3 minutes. Lucian completed it in 40 seconds. When my turn came, I decided to aim for 1 minute. I moved the ball slowly. Then I accidentally activated World Sense. The room changed. I could feel every current of mana, every vibration, every breath. The obstacle course looked painfully simple. My hand twitched. The metal ball shot forward, passed through every ring, spun around the instructor's head, drew a smiley face in the air, and landed back in my palm. Time, 0.31 seconds. I stared at the ball. The instructor stared at me. Lucian stared at me. A girl in the audience dropped her drink. I cleared my throat. Lucky wind. We were indoors. Nobody accepted the explanation. By the time the combat test started, rumors had already spread that the student with the failed awakening had destroyed a strength machine and completed the mana course faster than the machine could officially record. Professor Darius pulled me aside. "What did you awaken?" I looked him straight in the eye. Confusion. He rubbed his forehead. The combat exam matched students against training golems based on estimated ability. Bronze golems for average students, silver for talented ones, gold for monsters like Lucian. Lucian stepped into the arena and cut a gold golem in half with Holy Slash. The crowd exploded with cheers. Then it was my turn. The system scanned me. Perfect concealment was active. The machine selected a bronze golem. Excellent. I walked into the arena. The bronze golem raised its sword. I planned to dodge twice, block once, and win with an awkward punch. Simple. Then the golem's sword snapped in half before reaching me. I had forgotten about passive sword aura. My presence alone had cut the weapon. The golem looked at its broken sword. I looked at the golem. For one strange second, I felt like we understood each other. It punched me. I stood still, hoping to sell the hit. The golem's fist shattered against my chest. The entire arena went quiet again. I was starting to hate quiet arenas. The golem attacked with its other fist. That one shattered too. Now it had no hands. I felt bad, so I gently poked its forehead. The golem flew backward, bounced 6 times, smashed through the arena wall, and landed inside the cafeteria. A second later, someone screamed, "My noodles!" The instructor ended the match. I passed. Technically. The academy ranking board updated that afternoon. Lucian was number 1. A noble girl named Seraphine Arclight was number 2. A martial arts genius named Bram Kaur was number 3. I was listed as number 712 because the system could not calculate my results and decided to give up. Perfect. I wanted to stay low profile. Then a red notice appeared beside my name. Special evaluation required. Not perfect. The headmaster summoned me that evening. Headmaster Orlin was a terrifying old man with a silver beard, one eye, and the posture of someone who had survived several wars mostly by being too stubborn to die. He sat behind a giant desk. Professor Darius stood beside him. Lucian's father, Lord Crest, was also there for some reason, which made everything immediately more annoying. Headmaster Orlin placed a broken piece of the strength pillar on the desk. "Kael," he said, "do you know what this is? A warranty issue?" Professor Darius coughed to hide a laugh. Lord Crest did not laugh. Headmaster Orlin leaned forward. "Our machines are built to survive strikes from third-year combat students. You destroyed one with a tap." I shrugged. "I ate breakfast. Your mana control broke the academy record. Good breakfast. Your training golem is currently being removed from the cafeteria wall." I nodded. "Very good breakfast." Lord Crest slammed his palm on the desk. "This boy is hiding something." He had sharp eyes, expensive robes, and the exact same talent for looking offended as his son. I activated perfect concealment harder. Headmaster Orlin stared at me for a long moment, then he smiled. That scared me more than yelling would have. "Fine," he said. "We will not ask what your talent is." Lord Crest turned toward him. "Headmaster, but," Orlin continued, "Kael will enter the Abyss trial next week." Professor Darius went pale. I did not know what the Abyss trial was, so I smiled politely. Lord Crest smiled too. That told me I had made a mistake. The Abyss trial was not an exam. It was a nightmare wearing an academic label. Under the academy was a sealed dungeon known as the Hollow Depths. Every year, elite second and third year students entered the upper floors to hunt monsters and collect cores. First years were forbidden from going anywhere near it. The Abyss trial was a special exception. A candidate entered alone. They had to survive for 1 hour. Nobody expected them to kill anything. The goal was simply to prove their instincts, courage, and ability to escape. The current first-year record was 12 minutes before surrender. Headmaster Orlan wanted me to last an hour. I had a week to prepare. Naturally, I spent the first night buying teleportation skills, then invisibility, then trap detection, then monster anatomy, then dungeon mapping, then emergency cooking because I did not know how long underground monster meat stayed fresh. At some point, I unlocked dimensional storage, which solved the bigger problem of carrying equipment. The storage skill started with 10 cubic meters. I maxed it. It became endless vault. The description said the space inside had no known measurable limit. I tested it by storing my bed. It disappeared instantly. I brought it back, then I stored my desk, then my chair, then my wardrobe. Then I got curious and touched the wall. The whole wall vanished. My mother walked past the hallway and stopped. Kael, yes? Why can I see the street from your bedroom? Renovation. Put the house back. Yes, mother. Apparently Endless Vault could store sections of buildings. That seemed safe. 3 days before the Abyss trial, I went to the Academy training yard to test some magic. I had maxed fire control, but I had not actually cast anything serious yet. This was important because knowing how to launch a miniature sun and knowing whether I should launch a miniature sun were two different things. I chose the weakest fire spell I had, Spark. I aimed at a stone target. A tiny flame appeared above my finger. Good. Very normal. Then my passive mana amplification noticed I was casting magic and decided to help. The spark became a fireball. The fireball became a roaring sphere. The sphere became something that looked suspiciously like a local weather event. I panicked and threw it upward. The sky turned orange. Clouds evaporated in a perfect circle. Half the academy ran outside. I used spatial movement to flee before anyone saw me. The next morning, the school newspaper reported an unexplained atmospheric phenomenon. Lucian claimed it was probably caused by the pressure of his divine blade aura. I let him have that one. By the day of the Abyss trial, I had spent almost 5,000 points total. I still had more points than most legendary hunters earned across generations of family history. The trial chamber was beneath the academy, behind 7 security gates and 1 extremely dramatic staircase. Headmaster Orlan, Professor Darius, Lucian, Seraphine, several instructors, and a group of guild representatives watched from an observation room through crystal screens. I stood in front of a huge black door. Professor Darius gave me a rescue token. If you crush this, we pull you out immediately. I put it in my pocket. Headmaster Orlan spoke through a communication crystal. Your goal is survival. Do not fight anything unnecessary. I nodded. The door opened. Cold air rolled out. I stepped inside. The door slammed behind me. The Abyss trial began. For the first 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then danger intuition screamed so loudly inside my head that I ducked. A black spear flew over me. I turned. A creature stood in the shadows. It had 6 legs, armor plating, a skull-like face, and a tail covered in blades. My monster anatomy skill identified it instantly. Grave Mantis, threat level high for second-year students. Recommendation, retreat. The mantis lunged. I activated lightning step. The world slowed. The monster moved like it was trapped in syrup. I stepped around it, tapped the back of its neck, and accidentally removed its head. The body fell. I stared at my finger. I really needed a skill called gentleness. I searched my tree. There was actually one called Delicate Force. I bought it immediately. The observers saw me kill the grave mantis with 1 finger. What I did not know was that the observation room had gone completely silent. Lucian apparently claimed the mantis must have already been injured. 5 minutes later, I found a pack of 12. They were not injured. I tried to avoid them. They chased me, so I used a low-level wind spell to push them away. My low-level wind spell became a tornado in a tunnel. The mantises disappeared into the darkness. One came back several seconds later, spinning like a thrown fork. I dodged it. It continued down the tunnel and hit something huge. Something huge growled. I froze. A red eye opened in the darkness. Then another. Then 4 more. Monster Anatomy identified the creature. Abyss Hydra. Threat level, catastrophic. Recommended action, do not be here. I agreed with the skill. The Hydra crawled out of the tunnel, 6 heads smashing into the ceiling. This was not supposed to be on the upper floor. The observation room immediately went into chaos. Professor Darius shouted for extraction. Headmaster Orlan ordered the gate opened. The rescue formation activated. Nothing happened. A barrier had sealed the dungeon. I did not know any of this because the communication crystal had gone dead. From my perspective, I was simply standing in front of a 6-headed monster while holding a bag of Academy-issued dried meat. 1 Hydra head roared. The sound shook dust from the ceiling. I considered using sword aura. Too messy. Fire magic underground seemed unwise after the sky incident. Lightning might bounce. Ice could collapse the tunnel. Then I remembered monster taming. I had bought it as a joke. I maxed it because the final evolution was called Emperor of Beasts, which sounded like the kind of title I wanted on a business card. I activated taming pressure. The Hydra stopped. All 6 heads lowered. I stared. The Hydra stared. I held out the dried meat. One head sniffed it. Then another head tried to grab it. The first head bit the second. The third head joined in. Within seconds, the terrifying Abyss Hydra was fighting itself over a strip of salted beef. I laughed so hard I had to lean against the wall. Then a system message appeared. Would you like to form a beast pact? I pressed yes. The Abyss Hydra became my contracted beast. I named it Noodle. I had 6 better names available. I chose Noodle. The observation room watched me climb onto Noodle's back and ride deeper into the dungeon. Apparently this caused Headmaster Orlan to sit down very slowly. Lucien stopped making excuses. Seraphine started laughing. I, meanwhile, decided that surviving 1 hour was boring. If the dungeon barrier was malfunctioning, I needed to find out why. World Sense showed a strange pulse coming from below, so I told Noodle to follow it. The Hydra crashed through 3 corridors instead of using the turns. Subtlety was not one of Noodle's skills. We reached a sealed stone door covered in ancient symbols. Dragon language translated them. Do not open. Naturally, I opened it. Behind the door was a giant chamber filled with black chains. At the center floated a cracked red crystal. Dark mana poured from it. Around the crystal stood 5 hooded figures chanting. One of them turned. What? I waved from Noodle's back. Hello. The hooded figures stared at the 6-headed Hydra. I stared at the hooded figures. Nobody had prepared dialogue for this situation. Finally, the tallest one pointed at me. Kill him. The other 4 raised their staffs. My danger intuition did not react. That was rude. They fired dark bolts. I put up a basic mana shield. The bolts hit the shield and vanished. The cultists looked offended. I looked at my shield. Apparently maxed barrier arts were doing more work than expected. One cultist summoned a giant skeletal knight. Another summoned chains from the floor. A third transformed into a giant bat. The 4th just pulled out a knife and ran toward me, which I respected for its simplicity. I used delicate force this time. 1 palm strike. The knife cultist flew into a wall without exploding. Progress. Noodle slapped the skeletal knight with a tail. The skeleton became a pile of educational materials. The bat cultist flew toward the ceiling. I activated gravity control and increased gravity around him. He dropped like a sack of angry laundry. The chain spell wrapped around my arms. I flexed. The chains snapped. The caster looked down at his staff like it had betrayed him. The tall cultist screamed and threw a black sphere at the cracked red crystal. The crystal exploded. A portal opened. Every instinct I had told me that was bad. A giant claw pushed through the portal, then a horned head, then 2 burning eyes. Monster anatomy failed to identify it. That was the first time the skill had ever failed. A new message appeared. Unknown high-order entity. Partial manifestation detected. Recommended action. Flee immediately. The thing smiled. The cultist started cheering. I sighed. I had only wanted to pass an academy test. The demon pushed farther through the portal. Its hand alone was bigger than Noodle. The chamber shook. The ceiling cracked. I opened my skill tree while everyone else panicked. I searched for sealing techniques. There were several. Basic seal, advanced seal, spirit seal, dimensional lock, void anchor, reality stitching. That last one sounded useful. I spent 600 points in about 3 seconds. The sealing branch exploded with golden light inside my interface. Reality stitching evolved into World Seam Authority. That sounded even more useful. I activated it. The portal froze. The demon froze halfway through. Its smile disappeared. I grabbed the edge of the portal with both hands. I did not know if portals were supposed to have edges. Mine did now. Then I pulled. The tier in space began closing like a giant zipper. The demon roared and pushed harder. I pulled harder. For several seconds I had a tug-of-war with a creature from another dimension. One of the cultists whispered, "That is not possible." I agreed. It still happened. The demon tried to grab me. Noodle bit its finger. The demon screamed. I laughed. Then I slammed the portal shut. The demon's fingertip got sliced off and dropped onto the floor. Everyone stared at it. I stared too. Dimensional storage gave me an option. Would you like to store unknown demon fragment? I pressed yes. Of course I did. The cult leader dropped his staff. Who are you? My name is Kael. No, what are you? That was a harder question. Before I could answer, the dungeon shook again. The black chains around the chamber began snapping. The portal had only been part of the problem. Something under the floor was waking up. Noodle whimpered. I had never heard a 6-headed Hydra whimper before. It was not reassuring. The floor cracked. A massive stone hand burst upward. Then another. The entire chamber split apart as a colossal armored giant rose from below. Ancient runes burned across its chest. My dragon language skill translated the central rune, Warden. Then another system message appeared. Dungeon core defense mechanism activated. Intruder priority target selected. The giant looked directly at me. Of course it did. The cultist had been performing a forbidden ritual for who knew how long, but apparently I was the problem. The warden swung a stone fist. I grabbed Noodle and used spatial movement. We vanished. The fist hit the chamber floor. The entire dungeon jumped. We reappeared in a side tunnel. Noodle's 6 heads were tangled around each other from the teleport. I untangled them while the warden ripped through the wall behind us. It was about 30 meters tall, inside a dungeon. I had questions about architecture. The warden fired a beam of white mana from its chest. I used reflection barrier. The beam bounced back. The warden took its own attack to the face. Its head rotated backward, then slowly rotated back into place. I hated enemies that did that. My battle calculation skill analyzed it. Core in chest. Armor resistant to magic. Weakness requires concentrated physical penetration. Finally, something simple. I took an academy training sword from Endless Vault. It was wooden. I had forgotten to pack a real weapon. The warden charged. I sighed and activated Transcendent Blade Instinct. The wooden sword hummed. Sword aura formed around it. The blade became longer, then brighter, then terrifying. The cult leader saw it and sat down. I swung once. The slash crossed the chamber without touching the walls. A thin line appeared across the warden's chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire armored giant split cleanly in half. The dungeon core behind it shattered. Silence. Then every light in the dungeon went out. I stood there holding half a wooden training sword. The other half had burned away from my own aura. A system message appeared. Hidden achievement unlocked. Destroy a dungeon warden before official class selection. Reward. Unknown class seed. I stared at it. That sounded important. Then the dungeon started collapsing. Less important than not being buried. I grabbed the cultists with telekinesis, threw them onto Noodle's back, and used dungeon mapping to find the fastest path upward. The halls were collapsing too quickly, so I stopped using the halls. I activated body reinforcement and punched upward. Rock exploded. I punched again. And again. And again. The academy observation room suddenly heard a rumbling beneath the floor. Then I broke through the ground in the middle of the exam hall riding a 6-headed hydra with 5 unconscious cultists tied to its back. Dust filled the room. Students screamed. Teachers drew weapons. Noodle sneezed. One instructor fainted. I looked at Headmaster Orlin. How long was I inside? He looked at the clock. 43 minutes. I frowned. So I failed the 1-hour requirement? Headmaster Orlin stared at the hydra. Then the cultists. Then the hole in the floor. Then the demon fingertip I had accidentally pulled from storage while checking my pockets. No, he said. I think we can make an exception. That was how I became the first student in Academy history to pass the Abyss trial by destroying the Abyss trial. The Academy spent the next 2 days in panic. The cultists belonged to an underground group called the Crimson Eclipse, a forbidden organization that wanted to open gates to higher realms, and apparently had no concern for property damage. The 5 I captured refused to explain why they were beneath the Academy. One of them did ask whether I was secretly an ancient immortal. I told him I still had homework. He looked more frightened after that. Meanwhile, Noodle created a housing problem. The Academy did not have rules about students owning Abyss Hydras because nobody had been stupid enough to require such a rule. Headmaster Orlin tried to keep Noodle in the monster enclosure. Noodle escaped in 8 minutes. Not by breaking the cage. One head learned how to operate the latch while the other 5 distracted the guards. I had never been prouder. After that, Noodle followed me around campus. Students moved out of the hall when we walked by. The cafeteria gave me free meals because Noodle kept staring at the cooks. Lucian hated everything about this. 3 days later, he challenged me to a duel. It happened in the central training arena, in front of half the academy. Lucian stood across from me wearing polished armor and holding a silver sword that probably cost more than my house. I do not believe your strength is natural, he said. I looked at Noodle sleeping in the audience with all 6 heads piled on each other. Nothing about this week has felt natural. Lucian raised his sword. If you defeat me fairly, I will acknowledge your ranking. My ranking is 712. His eye twitched. The Academy still had not updated it. Apparently the ranking system rejected the Abyss trial data 3 times. Lucian's challenge had a second purpose. Lord Crest had brought guild representatives to watch. If Lucian defeated me, the rumors around me would calm down. If I defeated Lucian too easily, the rumors would become a wildfire. So I needed to win badly, but not too badly. This was somehow harder than fighting a dungeon warden. The duel started. Lucian used Holy Slash immediately. Golden light covered his blade. He moved faster than any normal first year could follow. To me, he was moving very slowly. World sense showed every muscle shift. Battle calculation predicted 17 attack patterns. Absolute comprehension copied the basic structure of Holy Slash after seeing it once. I almost felt guilty. Almost. I stepped aside at the last moment. His sword missed my face by a finger's width. The crowd gasped. Good. Close dodge. Very dramatic. Lucian turned and attacked again. I blocked with a cheap academy sword. His holy blade cut mine in half. That was actually not planned. The audience screamed. Lucian smiled. Then I looked at the broken sword in my hand. My skill interface offered a suggestion. Would you like to unlock improvised weapon mastery? Yes. Would you like to maximize improvised weapon mastery? Obviously. The broken sword became perfectly balanced in my grip. Lucian attacked again. I blocked with the guard, then the handle, then the broken flat edge. Each movement redirected his sword by a tiny amount. To the crowd, it looked like desperate survival. To me, it felt like playing with someone who had just learned the rules. Then Lucian stepped back and raised his sword overhead. His aura exploded. Radiant execution, the instructor shouted. That technique is too dangerous. Lucian swung anyway. A giant arc of golden energy flew toward me. I had planned to dodge. Then I noticed the audience behind me. If I moved, the barrier might stop it. Probably. I did not like probably. So I raised the broken sword handle. Absolute comprehension gave me the structure of Lucian's attack. Mana control gave me the precision. Sword instinct gave me the timing. I copied radiant execution, but I tried to weaken it. I really did. My version came out black and silver. The slash hit Lucian's golden arc. His attack exploded. Mine kept going. It passed over Lucian's head, sliced the arena barrier, cut a training tower in half, crossed the academy garden, and carved a line through a distant mountain. A few seconds later, the top of the mountain slid sideways. Nobody spoke. I looked at the broken sword handle, then at the mountain, then at Lucian. Draw? I asked. Lucian dropped his sword. He did not challenge me again. The guild representatives did not leave for several hours. The next morning, I had invitations from 12 guilds, 3 noble houses, the Royal Army, the Tower Association, and a traveling circus. The circus offered the best food package. I considered it seriously. Headmaster Orlan summoned me before I could answer anyone. He had aged visibly since my awakening. Kael, he said, we need to talk about your class. I remembered the hidden reward from the dungeon. Unknown class seed. Normally, people selected a class after their first month of training. Your talent and early skills influenced the options. Warrior, mage, ranger, healer, special classes appeared for rare talents. Lucian was expected to become a holy swordsman. Seraphine had awakened something called Starfire Witch. I had awakened an error message and 10,000 points. Headmaster Orlan took me to the class altar beneath the main tower. The altar scanned students and offered compatible paths. I placed my hand on it. The altar lit up. Then it went dark. Then it lit up again. Then it made a sound I recognized. Loading. Headmaster Orlan closed his eye. I hate when that happens around you. The altar displayed my options. Warrior, mage, assassin, paladin, battle healer, spellblade, beastlord, rune knight, void walker, dragon speaker, grand alchemist, dimensional hunter. The list kept going. Headmaster Orlan stared. I scrolled. More classes appeared. Storm monarch, sword saint, arcane tyrant, dungeon breaker, beast emperor, forbidden scholar, reality duelist. Then the altar started shaking. My unknown class seed activated. Every option disappeared. A single line appeared. Unique class formation in progress. Headmaster Orlan leaned closer. The altar cracked. A new class name appeared. Skill Devourer. I frowned. That sounded dangerous. Then the description appeared. Allows the user to permanently acquire fragments of abilities defeated, absorbed, studied, or consumed. My face went still. Headmaster Orlan read the description. His face went still too. I already had absolute comprehension. I already had thousands of skill points. Now the system wanted to let me steal pieces of enemy abilities. This was becoming unreasonable. I selected the class. The altar exploded. Not violently. It simply cracked into hundreds of glowing pieces and collapsed. Headmaster Orlan stared at the ruins. That altar is older than the kingdom. I nodded slowly. Warranty issue? He pointed toward the door. Leave. My class awakened immediately. Skill Devourer gave me 3 class abilities. Consume Fragment. Ability Synthesis. Skill Mutation. The first could absorb fragments from defeated enemies or magical objects. The second could combine compatible skills. The third could force skills to evolve in strange directions. Naturally, I tested Ability Synthesis before I even left the basement. I combined lightning step with shadow movement. The system warned me that the result was unstable. I pressed confirm. The two skills merged into thunder shadow stride. I took one step. I disappeared from the basement. I reappeared on top of the academy clock tower, upside down, holding Headmaster Orland's chair. I had no idea how the chair came with me. He found me 20 minutes later. I returned the chair. He did not ask questions. I thought that was the end of the problem. It was not. The moment I stepped down from the clock tower, endless vault shook inside my mind. That had never happened before. I opened the storage interface. Beds, weapons, monster cores, spare clothes, 3 bags of dumplings, and 1 severed fingertip from the higher demon were all exactly where I had left them. Except the demon fragment was glowing. I stared at it. Please do not explode. It exploded, not outside. Inside the storage space. Black fire spread across a place that was supposed to have no measurable end, and a new system window forced itself open in front of me. Foreign authority detected. Skill devourer reacting. Unknown memory seal damaged. I stopped walking. Memory seal? I had never purchased a memory seal. Before I could think about that, the demon fragment dissolved into thousands of tiny symbols. They flew toward the edge of my skill tree and formed a new branch. Every skill in it was locked. Gate domination, soul armor, authority theft, world crossing. And at the very bottom was one skill with no description at all. Return to 0, cost 10,000 skill points. I laughed once, then I stopped. My remaining balance was nowhere near 10,000 anymore. For the first time since awakening, the system was showing me something I could not simply buy. Then another message appeared. Sealed allocation detected. I felt my stomach drop. The number flickered. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. Then the screen vanished before I could see the final amount. A bell rang across the academy. Not the class bell, the emergency bell. Students rushed outside. Professor Darius shouted from the courtyard. Headmaster Orland was already staring at the sky. A black circle had appeared above the academy, larger than the entire main building. Noodle woke up and all 6 heads began growling. Lucian drew his sword. The clouds split. A woman stepped out of the black circle as casually as if she were walking through a front door. She wore white robes covered in tiny dark stars. She looked down at hundreds of students, then directly at me. My perfect concealment turned itself off. Every passive skill in my body went silent. Even the system froze. The woman smiled. There you are. Nobody moved. I slowly pointed at myself. Me? Her smile became colder. You really erased your own memories. A new golden window appeared. Administrator contact detected. Identity archive unlocking. My head exploded with pain. For 1 second I saw a different sky. A battlefield filled with broken moons. A throne made from shattered weapons. And myself standing in front of it, older, covered in blood, holding 10 glowing stones. Each stone contained 1,000 points, 10,000 total. A voice inside the memory said one sentence. If I wake up with these points, it means the war has already followed me. The vision vanished. I dropped to one knee. The woman raised her hand. Behind her, something enormous opened an eye inside the black portal. My skill interface came back. One final message appeared. Emergency reserve partially unsealed. Unspent skill points, 13,742. I stared at the number. Then I looked at the thing crawling through the sky. Then I smiled. Apparently my first week at the academy had only been the tutorial.